Hi, and welcome back to day 2 of my Conceptual Blueprint challenge. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed yesterday. It was probably not what you were expecting, but it's an important thing. It's this idea of a healthy, positive mindset, because you are going to come across things where you're going to just basically need to remember why you're doing this. So yeah, very important, and I'll keep banging on about it. So I apologize for that, but it really is important. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, today we're going to talk about influences. We're going to talk about the things that have influenced you throughout your life, from the day you were born to today, to this very moment. Now, these are the things that are, again, is going to help you understand what you want in your dream home. Because obviously the things that have influenced us through our lives are, well, they have a positive effect, the positive influences, yeah? And yeah, they have a positive effect for a reason, yeah? And obviously there are some that stay with you much clearer than others. And it's these ones that we're really looking for. It's these things, these influences. Again, just a couple of my examples. A lot of my influences. I was born in South Africa, and we lived there till I was 9 years old. And we didn't have television. Television didn't exist in South Africa. I think it came in 1976 or somewhere around there. If there's any South Africans in the audience, I'm sure you can either tell me that's right or wrong, but whatever. When I was growing up in South Africa as a child, we had no television. So I used to go to the cinema. We used to go to the cinema a lot as kids. They used to have like shows on Saturday mornings. And my favorites were those old black and white Tarzan films. With Johnny Weissman, or I think it was. And what I liked about it most was he had his treehouse. He had this amazing treehouse, and I always, as a kid, I just thought, wow, I would love to live in that treehouse. So it's always been something that I dream of. It's something, if I'm going to be doing my dream house, it's going to remind me of this treehouse. And I mean, it's not going to literally be a treehouse, but there'll be references to it. And that's what I mean by influences. So that's just one example as a kid growing up. And again, it doesn't have to be from your childhood. It can be something you saw yesterday, something you saw this afternoon, something a friend told you last week. Yeah. Don't sort of get bogged down on it having to be like old memories or whatever. Now, the way I like to do this is to how do I put it? To focus on this. The best thing to do is to sort of shut all distractions away. We live in a very busy world. I mean, we're all busy. There's distractions. We've got this. We've got our phone. You've got the internet. You've got email. There's something going on all the time, and these things just distract us. So what I like to do first is really to center yourself. Is to spend 10 minutes, no more, meditating. Just quietening your mind, concentrating on your breathing, and getting into this rhythm of being very aware of your breath, and any thoughts that come, just let them come and pass, and don't dwell on them. There's this myth about it. I think it's a misunderstanding about meditation that for it to work, for it to work, you have to sort of be off on a trance somewhere or something. But that's not meditation. That's not what I think meditation is at all. Meditation is, for me, it's about quietening my mind. It's about focusing on the present. And the way I do that the best is I literally just spend 10 minutes with my eyes closed, listening to some soothing music, just concentrating on my breath and letting my mind just go. And I'd suggest, I'd recommend you do that before you start to really explore your influences. And what you could do is you could use these 10 minutes to literally walk through your life. And just pick out the things that have influenced you. Identify them. And again, there's different types of influences. There are, I like to call them your emotional influences. So these are things that made you feel a certain way. Then you have the physical influences. And these are things like how you felt. Was it hot, calm, harsh? Was it peaceful? These sort of things. And then there's a spiritual emotion. And these are ones, this is a little bit more tricky, but these would be ones that made you stop and think, made you stop and feel in a deeper way. So I don't know, I'm trying to think of one of mine. One of mine was when my son was born, my first child. That influenced me. That was an event which I'm sure any of you who are parents would understand that. That moment, it's with me forever. And I remember, and at that moment, I remember he was a cesarean birth. So I wasn't allowed in because they said then they'll have 2 patients instead of 1. So I was waiting outside. And the very first sign was I heard him crying, like when babies do when they take their first breaths. And I remember in that moment hearing him crying, realizing that my purpose was totally different. My purpose has just taken on another dimension. I'm now a father. And that had a very spiritual, for me was a very spiritual moment, because it made me think very deep, made me think more deeply about who I am, what my purpose here is. So that's just one of the things that I would say was a spiritual. Now, what about like an example of an emotional one would be something from quite recently. I was having a conversation with somebody about 2 months ago, and they just said out of the blue something really positive about me, just out of the blue, something really appreciative. And it just made me feel this, I had this sense of just contentment. I felt seen, I suppose, for want of a better word. So that would be an emotional influence. And then the physical one, those are an easy one. And the very first one that always comes up for me is when we moved to England from South Africa. We moved in November, and in November is summertime in South Africa, so it was very warm. And we got off the plane in London, and it was November. It was cold and grey and wet. And I always remember never having felt that cold before. Or another one was when we went, the first time we went swimming in the English Channel. Now, I don't know if, how many of you have done that, but coming from the Indian Ocean to the English Channel was a big shock. And I remember the first time going in the water, not having any idea that it was going to be that cold. And I just remember feeling so cold. But yeah, so those are just some sort of some of the things that have influenced me. Yeah. Now, obviously, we don't only have influences, we have, well, positive, we have negative influences. No? And these are things that would cause us to be fearful. And of course, we all have fear. We all feel fear. It's a perfectly normal reaction. Yeah. And it's our mind's way of keeping us safe. The things we're scared of, we don't do, we stay away from. They keep us safe. Yeah. And obviously that can be justified a lot of the time. Yeah. You're not going to, we're not going to just walk out in front of a bus or throw ourselves off a 10-story building. These are genuine fears. Yeah. I'm scared of those ones. But then there's the fears that hold you back. Yeah. The fears that hold you back, and like something like building a house. I would have thought one of the biggest ones would be you don't think you're creative enough to be part of this design team, to come up with anything worthwhile, or you don't think you can afford it. Having a dream house is only for the rich, or you might just think you wouldn't be able to cope. It would just all be too stressful for you. Now, these are things your mind, this is your mind talking, your ego, and it's trying to keep you safe, but it's also holding you back. It's holding you back. So what you should do is you should look at these fears. And another thing about fear, 99.9% of the time, the things we're scared of never happen. Yeah. And when they do happen, it's never or very rarely as bad as we thought it was going to be. Our minds create this illusion, which it is, to keep us safe. Like I said, to keep us safe. So when you can understand that, you can face your fears. And there's another saying, there's a saying I like. How does it go? It's, being afraid is something we all have, but being courageous is being afraid of something and doing it anyway. That's courage. And it takes courage, what you're doing. If you want to build this house, if you want to have your dream home, it does take courage. And I honor you for that, because there's not many people have that courage. Yeah. So just be mindful of that. And think about the things you're afraid of. And then putting that into perspective, okay, you're afraid of it. What's the likelihood of it actually happening? Yeah. So let's take, for example, say you're worried about the money. Yeah. So what would happen is, you're going to you start and suddenly your architect or the builders give you prices that are way too high. Yeah. What is that going to do? What does that mean? It's not going to kill you. The worst that could happen is you have to stop and you have to start again. That's the worst that could happen. But what will most likely happen is you'll just look at it, you'll refine your design, and you'll come up with another solution. You'll come up with a solution that works. Yeah, and that's just one example. And if you don't believe me, just think of times in your life where you have had to face your fears. Think of them and think what actually happened. And afterwards, how did it feel when you actually went through it? You came out the other side and it was a success. Yeah. And don't you ask yourself, my God, what was I so worried about? I can't believe I was so worried. So that's what I want to talk about. That's really what I've got to say on fears. Yeah. Apart from, think about the things you're afraid of. Think about the likelihood of them actually happening. Yeah. And then think about how you could be resourceful enough to overcome those fears. So having looked at your fears, yeah, if you still, if they're still there, it's still nagging, just ask yourself, what would need to happen to change it? Yeah. Would you need to get more knowledge? Would you need to save more money? Would you need to visit some buildings to get inspired? Yeah. And what about if it were not true anymore? Yeah. So if you looked at it and you realize, no, this fear it's not there. I'm not afraid of this. Yeah. This is nothing to be afraid of. Yeah. Think about what are the positives that would come out of that. Yeah. So it'll often be the opposite. So, if you were afraid of diving in, of committing, you'll be looking forward to committing. Yeah. So these are the positives that can come out of it. So it's really important to identify the things that you're worried about and talk about them and put them in perspective. And always remember, when did these things last happen? If they ever happened at all. Yeah. And how did you solve them then? And what's going to stop you solving them exactly the same way next time this happens? And I think most of the time you'll realize that the things that you're worried about are literally just trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe. Okay, so that's about all we've got today on our influences. So what we've done is we've looked at the things that have influenced us in a positive way. And we've looked at the three types of influences, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual ones. And then we looked at the things we're worried about. Yeah, the idea that these things are they're just a fabrication in our mind. They are just a product of our mind trying to keep us safe. And we thought about when did this last happen? And how did we deal with it? And then we thought about, what have we changed that? Have we changed our perspective on these fears? And if we have, what's the positive that's come out of that? So I hope it's helped you this second day of the challenge. Tomorrow we're going to look a bit more on the tactics, on the things we need to do to actually to be able to communicate our ideas. What do we actually have to do? Interesting. It'll be a very interesting one, and I hope you're there to join me. So thanks again. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you again same time tomorrow for day 3 of my Conceptual Blueprint challenge. So take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.